Well, let's get into our panel this evening and we start looking at SAPS from a national point of view. Now, the DA says it will launch an investigation to establish how alleged abuses and misconduct by members of police were left to occur and what steps were taken against implicated officers. A report by the police watchdog Ipid has revealed that over 5,000 cases of police-related incidents were recorded, including cases of rape in custody as well as torture. Well, to unpack this evening, we are joined by the Police Minister. Minister Senzo Mchunu joins us via video link. We're also joined by the South African Police Union spokesperson, Lisiba Tobakale. From KwaZulu-Natal, we're joined by the province's Policing Community Policing Forum Secretary, Sianda Biela, as well as crime expert, Guy Lamb, also joining us this evening. Gentlemen, a good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us. I think, Minister Mchunu, obviously, let's start with you. This Ipid annual performance report showing 5,136 cases of police-related incidents that they've recorded. Now, of course, I don't take for granted that this was in the financial year 2023 to 2024. So this is, of course, before your period as police minister. But I imagine that you obviously have been well informed about, some of the challenges that you have within the system. Your response to seeing that in that 1 year, 5,000 cases of incidents were recorded, what was your initial concern there?
Thank you very much to your station, that is Newzroom Afrika, and the viewers. Firstly, let me start with the incident in Cape Town. I think when we say police, it sends a different message because you're talking about traffic cops.
Right.
Yes, they are cops themselves, but it would create an impression that South African police were involved in the scuffle. And I think we need to clarify that they were not involved, as far as I know or I have heard. But let me come back to the subject. 5,000 in the last financial year.
So, Mr. Biela, please, can you switch off your microphone? We're able to hear you and it is interrupting the flow. Apologies for that, Minister. Go ahead.
Yeah. Firstly, whenever there is an incident where police are involved and where there is a death, it's Ipid's mandate to go and investigate and write a report. Whether there is a complaint or no complaint, it is their mandate to do that particular job. Even police, you would hear that police were cornered in a particular place and to protect themselves, they shot back or they defended themselves. And one or two people, or whatever the case may be, then died on the spot when police were defending themselves. Ipid would go there and investigate. It doesn't have to be a complaint. And therefore, having clarified that, I would say, as a second point, there is increased criminality in South Africa. Generally, is it, when we say murder is declining in terms of the statistics of the last quarter, we add that at a high level. That's murder. And we say use of firearms, whether legal or illegal firearms, is also declining, but at a high level. And that's high level, still alarmingly high. And we talk about GBV, that involves murdering of women, with guns being the instrument of preference in such, because by and large, statistics show that most of the women who were murdered, they were murdered via a gun. Now, that shows that I'm making examples of high tendencies of violence, but linked with criminality in South Africa at the moment. Now, when you then take it and you look at what Ipid is doing, it shouldn't be done in isolation. It should be in the context of high levels of criminality, high levels of use of weapons, high levels of murder, rape, and all those incidents that are violent crimes, which we are decrying. That one of the things that we need to do and our society need to do is to find a remedy, which is outside our mandate, but we can be involved. Why is it that South Africans are showing signs of criminality general, whether sophisticated or even violent crime? And why are they even murderers or wanting to increasingly involved in violent crimes? You count them one by one. So all I'm saying is that the 5,000 must be looked at in the context of what's happening by and large in the country.
Yeah, okay. And that sets a great place for us to start. And perhaps, Mr. Biela, this is where I bring you in, because you are with the CPF in KwaZulu-Natal. Now, this is a particularly interesting province here, because according to this annual report by Ipid, 237 cases of torture have been recorded. It's a 20% increase, and KZN is one of the emerging hotspots. The minister saying that, well, we are seeing some of these cases coming from the actions of police, but it must not be talked about without the context of the high tendencies of violent crime in South Africa. Is that something that you would agree with in the context of what's happening in KZN?
No, good evening, Naledi. Good evening to the minister, the panelists, and the viewers at home. Obviously, I've been here in this platform before, I think last year, to actually engage on the issue where there was a call that the Provincial Commissioner of KZN, Lieutenant General Kankamkonas, was present and had members of the South African Police Services in the province who were trigger happy, killing for no reason, not bringing people into justice. But our call as the Community Police Board was that in our quest to oversee the work of the service, we must ensure that there's efficiency. And the community must assist the police in executing their service and their work. But the cloud and call is that we have a challenge. Obviously, with the inception of the Ipid being put to law in 2011, being put into practice in 2012, over the years we've seen, yes, an escalation of cases against the police. We might not render away and run away that some of the incidents which had occurred in our communities across the board are really unjustifiable from our members. But at the cause, we should also balance the blame as the community and the board and the South African Police Service to say, can't we protect them? In understanding that the virtue of crime and the patterns that are there now in our community speaks to a different danger that was there over the past 10 years. For instance, you have the issues where you have the West Gang in Inand. The young people in 13, 14 years, they have been told, the eldest one and the leader was around 20, 23 years old. A young person carrying a lot of ammunition and guns in the community is terrifying the community of elders in our community. So it tells you that the situation that is being faced by the South African Police Services at all units and at all levels must also try and find the balance and match the criteria of the threats that are there in the community. So the brazen part where we have to say we want to balance the blame as the board and say, as we blame the communities in not supporting the South African Police Service in dealing with criminal activities in our communities, but we must also blame those who we believe are overstepping their hand in terms of...
Okay, your line is getting choppy there, Mr. Biela, but I think the point is made certainly, and we'll come back to you a little bit later on. I want to bring in Mr. Lisiba Tobakale now, who's with the police union as the spokesperson. I don't know how you to make sense of these numbers, because I want to break them down a little bit, right? 460 people who have died due to police action during that year, 2023 to 2024. That's a 17% increase, right? You do have a decrease of deaths of individuals who are in police custody. You have 3,176 cases of assault at the hands of police. Torture cases are up by 20%, and perhaps we need to talk a little bit about that. And then this is really concerning. Rape in custody, you've got 7 cases. Rape by police officers, 110. I mean, how do you contextualize how we come to these numbers as a union for police?
Thank you for having us, Naledi. Greetings to Minister, Mr. Lemp, and Ubabu Biela, and also to the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. Naledi, we need to start from here. Let's talk about the increased numbers of murder, which it happens to be reported as of the action of the police. I think the minister placed it very well to say when we look at the cases that Ipid is investigating, we need to look as well as the cases that are there, like murder in South Africa. South Africa is a violent country in its nature. That is clearly informed by our history, because we never got a debrief as a country from the history that we came from. And we continue to see that violence increasing. And also speaking to the cases where police action, suspects lost their lives. That one, it is indeed something that when we look at it, we need to look at it and also compare it to say, what were the circumstances around such actions? I mean, a lot of people don't say a lot when we hear about police killings, when we hear about the attacks that were against the police. And any case that happens to be out of the action of the police. So it means that the police were executing their duties, and then ultimately somewhere in the confrontation, then it happens to be that somebody lost their lives. So we need to look at it in that context when it comes to the murder. And obviously each and every case will have its own merits. And Ipid in their reports, and even in those cases, the outcome thereof, when they get finalized, I think we need to look at how do they get close, because Ipid has a mandate to investigate the police. But looking at other cases that you alluded to, Naledi, like torture, and even other cases like sexual assault, rape, and so on, I think when we look at those cases, we also need to also apply our minds correctly. And as a union, we need to be clear that we condemn any form of criminality by anyone, being it by the police or being it by the members of the public, because all of us, we are equal before the law. And some of those cases, like rape cases, we want to single that one out, Naledi, to say, yes, some of them, they are genuine cases that are there, and it is unfortunate. And I think it should worry management of the South African Police Services to say, indeed, how do we have something like that? But we also need to look further at the fact that, except having those genuine cases, that you find that indeed one has committed such crimes, we also need to look at, if you are a police officer, it is easy for you to be targeted as well. Being it coming out from a sour relationship with your partner, some things they don't happen to go right. We must not rule those possibilities out. I mean, us, we are saying it from the perspective of where we represent our members in different types of departmental cases. And when we look at the merits thereof, some of them we deduct such type of modus operandi or such a trend that happens to come out, where if a relationship falls out, and we know that if one is a law enforcement officer, it becomes quite easy for them to say, you know what, you have committed something like this in order to serve as a revenge. We need to look at that. But where there are genuine cases where criminality has happened, we are saying that the law should be allowed to take its course, and indeed everything that has to follow through in terms of investigating those cases and then also prosecution of such cases, it should also unfold through. But we also need to look at this other important factor that is there in terms of the nature of policing itself in South Africa. Policing in South Africa, it is not an easy job because of the high level of criminality that Naledi we referred to earlier. And that makes our members to be overwhelmed in terms of them conducting their duties. And we should not run away from such facts, because it is a reality that the members of the South African Police Services are clearly faced with. And some of them, you find that they then, because of the nature of the job overwhelming them, some of them, they start they happen to have their own personal challenges. We need to look at the issue of employee health and wellness as well. You find that some working far from home, and then they happen to have they want transfers to be transferred closer to their homes where they can get support and so on. And that on its own, it also play, if they don't get such transfers, if their financial situations, they don't happen to speak to somebody who can assist them, it also takes a toll on them. That is why the outcome of some of the cases we see criminality coming out.
Yeah, I don't know if you can say, psychosocial stress, is a reason that you can put forward to say, well, that is why you have 3,000 cases of assault at the hands of police, or 110 cases of rape by police officers, 237 cases of torture by police officers, and to be able to say, well, they don't have a lot of psychosocial support. But Guy, you're our expert, criminology expert. Talk to us about what you're hearing here, the 5,000 cases. I'm actually also keen to hear if you think that that number represents what actually should be reported.
Good evening, lady. Good evening to the other panelists and to your listeners. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Just a bit of context here. We've been throwing numbers around. I think it's quite important to note that we have more than 100,000 SAPS officers, operating throughout South Africa through more than 1,100 policing station areas. And it's probably the largest kind of component of kind of government employees we have as a department. And ready to emphasize the environment in which they work is incredibly dangerous. It's been emphasized, the high crime rate. So it is probably one of the most dangerous jobs in South Africa to be a frontline police official. And so in those kind of contexts of danger, we are going to see violence perpetrated by police officials. And this is common across countries. We see it reflected a lot within the US literature, within US kind of, popular media and films and series, for example. But it is fairly common in high crime societies. I think the kind of point that's coming out, and I think it's important to have these discussions around the use of forces, because within a democracy, we have constraints on that, but we do allow the police access to firearms. We allow the police to use force. We allow the police to use lethal force to defend themselves. And this is a very special privilege that's given to them. But it's something that needs to be constantly monitored, because what we know from other countries, what we know from our own history in South Africa is we don't monitor this. We don't hold the police to account for it. It's a very slippery slope. It can happen in a very short space of time that we build cultures of impunity. We see the emergence of death squads. We've seen this happen in more recently in places like Brazil, Colombia, and a few other sort of kind of Latin American countries. We've had rumors of certain police units being heavy-handed and overusing firearms in the context of fighting crime. We know KwaZulu-Natal has quite a long history of kind of excessive police violence relative to other provinces. So it's things we need to be concerned about. But I think the one thing that does stand out for me from this report, and this kind of concern about cultures of impunity, is if we look at, it's a tiny graph that's buried deep in the report about what happens to these cases. And the concern is that more than 50% end up being undetected. They're closed undetected, which means there's no finding. The victims don't get justice, the perpetrators get away if there was a certain crime. We don't know the types of crime involved in that, but that number of more than 50% is quite worrying. The same around, of that, we look at more than 30, I think it's about 31% within that particular graphic, indicates that those cases would decline, namely the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority, decided not to take them to court because the evidence wasn't good enough. They thought they wouldn't stand a chance of securing a conviction. So you're sitting with about 80% of cases not going anywhere. And that's really worrying, because that does create these kind of cultures of impunity and sort of suggests that there's not enough, kind of police officials being held to account for their actions. And in many respects, some police officials, there may be nothing to it. There may be a false accusation involved. But those who perpetrate crimes, there seems to be a high degree of likelihood that they'll get away with perpetrating that particular crime. So I think that's something, when we talk about these sort of things, we really need to be looking at the internal mechanisms, the disciplinary procedures, the investigations around police, because police the world over really don't like having themselves scrutinized, because it is seen as a calling, is seen as a profession, that everyone outside is getting involved. But it is something around, we have a democracy that doesn't have a death penalty, but yet we give police the ability to perpetrate lethal violence and hence carry out death penalties. So I think it's very important for us to be kind of monitoring that types of behavior. And the worry is also Ipid's lost, it's had budget cuts. So it's completely understaffed, under-budgeted, and I think it's something we really need to pay serious attention to.
Sure. Minister Mkhunu, a lot for you to respond to there. I mean, Guy Lam at the end, they're talking about the capacity that Ipid has as well to follow through on some of these cases. I'm keen to hear what you say about the fact that when you do have cases recorded against, the actions of police, that quite often there is the 50% roundabout probability that those cases may not see a resolution. What do you say about that and how we get there? But I did challenge Lesiba Tabakhale of SAPU on this issue around psychosocial support for our police. But he did raise an incredibly important point, right? That is there enough of that support taking place? Ian Cameron, chairperson of the Portfolio Committee towards the end of last year, raising that issue as well, that we need to put our energy into psychosocial support for our police.
Yes, but firstly, even before we talk about support, psychosocial support and other support mechanisms, I agree with some wrong actions or wrong behavior on the side of police, including things that are unprovoked, unacceptable. Rape in police cells, that number, even if it was one, unacceptable. Look, police are protectors of society. And that goes with their training, it goes with their coaching in terms of behavior and what is expected. And for any police officer, the recent one in Cape Town, when we looked at one of the statements that police person who had been, or policeman who had been arrested for such an incident, talks about the lady looking at him, talking to him, almost saying she was inviting me and all of that. And it's a language, it's behavior that is unacceptable. And I think police out there, they must know when they get involved in such. Torture, things like rape and so on, and even murders. There are standards, there are criteria that police need to comply with in terms of their behavior and then behave accordingly. But having said this, I want to say at the same time, it's not the majority of police who behave in this wayward way. There are about 153 police officers in the country who are active in our working. And even in this 17% increase, yes, the number is increasing. It means it is an increased number of them. But I do want to say the vast majority of police in the country, not undermining the intensity and the importance of what has happened, which we must undertake to drive down, because those 450 cases on their own, too high. But I'm saying it's not the majority of, just for us to know this as South Africans, it's not the majority that are behaving that way, whether it's murder, it's torture, or it's rape. But that number, that behavior, it must be known. We don't accept it in the ministry. We don't accept it even on behalf of management nationally. Now, then let me just say, in these incidents that Ipid has recorded, we must also point out that police themselves are also sometimes they become victims on this. And they're incrementally becoming victims. And that is worried. And that includes murder. That's why we've even said we need to tighten regulations. The just police officers who have lost their lives this financial year is 71. And that is very high. which means that much as we don't accept the sheer number, 5,000 cases, of which 450 is murders, we also don't accept murders among police as they do their work and then they become victims. And wanting to warn society, warn criminals, that we've said to police they must never hesitate to protect themselves and to protect citizens of the country against criminals who are dangerous. They must act.
Yeah.
And that's why they are armed. And so this is also a context.
Yeah.
But even then, I do need to say, we are looking forward to policing that is without these incidents or a very minimal
of these
level
numbers.
of these incidents.
Yeah.
Yes.
Minister, I need to take a short break. There's so much more to talk about, and we'll cover that as well, and more on the other side of this short break. One thing that we do need to talk about, though, when we come back, is certainly the community's relationship with policing, right? And how, if at all, that influences how police are able to do their work. Give us a call, 0105946010, or send us a WhatsApp, 072-110-5584. We're back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition, and this is the conversation we're having this evening. The DA saying it will launch an investigation to establish how alleged abuses and misconduct by members of police were left to occur and what steps were being taken against implicated officers. Of course, this is after Ipid has recorded 5,136 cases of police-related incidents. That's between 2023 and 2024. Taking your WhatsApps, 072-110-5584, or give us a call and share your thoughts, particularly around how you think we get these numbers and what can be done to turn them around. But I'm also keen to hear your view on our own community's relationships with police, 072-110-5584, or give us a call on 010-5946010. Let's see some of those WhatsApps that have come in. Teresa says, hi, ladies. So regarding the incident between a taxi driver and police officers in Khayelitsha, how is it possible that the city of Cape Town and JP Smith can condone the apartheid style of torturing till a driver lost consciousness? How is that okay? According to JP Smith, there's nothing wrong with putting someone in a neck hold, a blatant, shameful apartheid act. Teresa, thank you so much for sending in that WhatsApp. And of course, in this conversation, we are, of course, talking about a national SAPS, but more than welcome to share your thoughts on the story coming out of the metros as well. Spusiso says, good evening. The misconduct of police in over 5,000 cases in a year comes as the men and women in blue are under pressure. We're tired of crime in South Africa, and the blue team wants to bring dignity and honor to their field of work. In that, they commit lots of mistakes. Okay, Spusiso in Bronkhorstspruit with that one. Zwabantu Qaba says, yes, the SAPS are the law to themselves. They are committing a criminal offense on broad daylight and no accountability. We as the citizens are supposed to have other options where we can report ill treatment and criminality of those undisciplined police officers, except reporting to the very same police who end up harassing us. Mzwabantu there with that text. Thank you so much. Zephania says, Minister of Police Senzo Mkhunu must have a firm hand on these corrupt potatoes within the police service. Many of these policemen and women are working with criminals and often abuse state resources for their gains. Minister must flush them all. Zephania, we appreciate that WhatsApp. And so Mzwabantu sends in a WhatsApp that I thought was particularly interesting, Mr. Biela, and you're, I think, the right person to help us with this. The relationship that communities have with their police officers. Mzwabantu essentially saying there simply is no trust between communities and the police officers themselves. In some cases, communities arguing that they believe the police are involved in some of the crimes that they see taking place around them. So as the CPF, how do you, I suppose, observe that relationship and why it's so important? And if at all it contributes to the numbers that we see here that Ipid is recording?
Obviously, we have seen cases where the trust deficit between the community and the police has been on the rise. But as the CPF in all corners of the country, we've ensured that this relationship is being rebuilt, this relationship is being are maintained to ensure that there's community involvement in policy. But remember, part of the applauding is once we deal with the numbers, with the 5,100 and something numbers that you are saying in terms of offences, must also applaud the 2,000 plus members who've been dismissed in the service due to being caught or being justified to be outside of the law or acted outside of the conduct. So we must also, as we do the balance and as we do the numbers, say the 5,000 versus the 2,000 something plus, that speaks to those who've been dismissed in the service. Because part of the problem that we have in the service is that the service is now not a calling, it is an opportunity for people to get permanent employment. So the project 10,000, instead of bringing more boots into the ground for safer communities, they are now becoming an employment agency where a person comes there to be employed, and the attitude to serve the community is not within the heart and is not within the values that they preserve. So part of the issues that we are calling on the South African Police Services through the minister who believe we can achieve this is to meet with us as the CPF at all corners and ensure that we find a baseline and a framework on how to ensure that we strip away this trust deficit and cast away those members who we believe 1 out of the 2,000 per province is guilty or is outside of the misconduct. So our point is that we are making progress, and all of those that are being cast away are cast away by the benefit that the community is bringing in valuable information and valuable evidence to ensure that they are brought to book.
Yeah. I'm almost out of time, and I want to spend a little bit of time with the minister at the tail end of this discussion. So if you'd allow me, Guy Lamb, apologies for that. I mean, your recommendations, the minister says we need to bring these numbers down. What is the recommendation that you put on the table on how we get there?
Beg your pardon, who's the question for?
For you, Guy.
Oh, for me, sorry.
Sure.
I heard you say the minister.
I butchered your name there. Apologies. Yeah.
Not a problem. It's not a problem at all. I mean, in terms of bringing these numbers down, it's really about to understand where the problems are. It's the same with crime within South Africa. Crime is not evenly distributed. It happens in probably, most crime happens in probably 20 to 25% of the policing areas out there. The same around kind of policing behavior. You're going to find that there are certain police stations that are more problematic than others, as you find in terms of certain police stations where you've got a really hands-on committed management station commander and a senior team that's working with that station commander, develop a very good relationship with the community. There's a good relationship of trust. People report crime, they get a professional service. In some areas, the standard of policing is not good. Trust is low. Police are regarded as lazy or inept or regarded as problematic. And this often has to do with internal processes. Unfortunately, within the police, there have been traditions of redeploying certain members who have committed crimes, who have been problematic, who have underperformed, and the sort of strafstasi punishment station culture has existed. Certainly the Khalichi Commission of Inquiry about 10 years ago demonstrated this. And I think those kind of cultures do exist. So you're having these bad apples that get constantly rotated through the police and end up in stations and actually undermine the kind of commitment and service offered by those stations. So I think it's really important to find ways to undermine this culture of impunity that's building in certain places, and really do get rid of the bad apples. And I think it kind of starts within. It's about the police looking for better ways to discipline members, looking for better ways to reward those who are providing a good service, and encourage and incentivize that. And in so doing, you can improve that. But then also you've got to investigate where we're having problems. So, for example, if you look at deaths in custody, a lot of people are dying from natural causes in custody or from suicide. So there's something going on in terms of people not being adequately monitored in cells, that they're dying in cells. So that needs to be addressed. But also we need to look at situations where police are shooting, alleged perpetrators, and actually determine whether those shooting incidences were justified. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, Guy, thank you so much for that. We're taking calls. All right, we're going to get that caller back in a moment. But Alisiba, your final thoughts. I mean, you've got the police minister here listening, the recommendations that you put forward on how to help him and us get those numbers down.
Yeah, no, we clearly need to hold hands. We believe in collaboration, and also looking into the panel of experts' recommendations that were made into Marikana in terms of professionalizing the police, and also it goes hand in hand with ethics. The issue of ethics are quite important because ethics, that is one of the things that are playing a critical role in terms of ensuring that, the police are always at all times remembering what is it that they need to do. So if we really implement most of the recommendations that are clearly found in terms of the panel of experts report into Marikana, looking into those, they would assist us. But further to that, I think challenges that we spoke about that deals with, the employee health and wellness of the workers within the police. There's a lot of issues that are still there. They need to get quite a support in order to ensure that they know that clearly, somebody has their back so that they can give a good output in saving our communities, fulfilling that constitutional mandate.
Right.
And moreover, just to make sure that, the police, they know when they are doing their work, that management has their back. Where they need state protection, they should be afforded such whilst their incidents happens while they are on duty and so on. Because we have seen in the past, like during Krugersdorp 4, a case where members were left without any assistance, legal assistance in terms of criminal cases. We had to chip in as an organization to provide lawyers, and ultimately, they won those cases. So we need to move forward. But moreover, we need to collaborate. We need to work together.
All right. So, Mr. Tabakale, an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And thank you so much to our other panelists. I will continue the conversation just a little bit further with the police minister on the other side of this. But we do have a quick caller. Mr. John is in Makaro. John, good evening. Thanks for calling.
Good evening.
Yes, talk to us, sir.
Hey, I'm trying to say we're happy to find out that the minister is on top of this problem. But here on the police station and other things, we've got a lot of problem there because they are selling cases and then the case does not go to the NPA, and the NPA prosecutor also has got the case has sold, and then now that people is working with this criminal and they pay him. They just say us that we can go whatever we go. There's no way we can go. We go all in the district. We went on the province. And then in that case now, the people are vandalizing people, and the children of the school are not going to school for agriculture now. And then everything, now it looks like now the people are not working. They are running for the criminals.
Sure.
So this case is about 9 cases. We just reported in the case, and it does not go through.
Yeah, but I'd be interested to hear more about those cases. So perhaps, if you will, John, say your contacts with our producers as well. Let's hear from Marvin in Durban. Marvin, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, thank you so much for calling.
Now I'm commenting on the police action here in Cape Town. You do not always have to blame the police. South Africa, I'm an ex-police captain. The problem in the police and the communities, when the police go to arrest someone, they start to resist arrest. And then it doesn't take 6 police officers. Why does it take 6 police officers to arrest one person? The only reason is that he's resisting arrest. So the police must use force. The problem is, in South Africa, the people don't want to submit to arrest when the police officer arrests them. So the police must use force.
Okay. All right, Marvin, that point is clear. Yeah, we really do appreciate your call. We need to take a short break. But I want to thank our guest, Guy Lamb, crime expert, Sianda Biela, who is KZN's CPF Provincial Secretary, Lesiba Tabakale, who is the South African Police Union spokesperson. When we come back, though, we'll continue with the Minister for the Department of Police, Minister Senzo Mkhunu, who will chat with us some more on the other side of this. Stay with us. Welcome back. So we continue to get final responses now from the Police Minister, Senzo Mkhunu, to some of the recommendations that have been shared by a crime expert, the Police Union, as well as the CPF representing one province, that being KZN, to the matter of the Ipid annual performance report showing 5,136 cases of police-related criminal incidents. But the Minister, I think just in under a minute before we move on to other pertinent issues, the biggest takeouts from the contributions that you've gotten here, and are you confident that we can certainly bring those numbers down in the financial year that is to come, or the annual period that is to come?
Yes, we want to bring murders in the country down, and that would mean that murders that come out of these incidents where there's interaction between criminals and police must also come down uh, uh, as, uh, uh, as reduced as possible, except where nothing could be done. But they sound, much as there's context, much as we've explained everything, and much as there are DC cases where they are, and much as this is a demonstration that police are not just doing as they like. There's Ipid who are looking at them and so on, but the numbers may be reflective of some of the unacceptable behavior on the type of police, on the behavior of police, especially as they relate to incidents like rape, torture, and other things that can be avoided.
Yep.
And we want to urge police and everybody else, like unions, rage must come down, and let's just deal with criminality.
All right. Thank you for that, Minister. I want to move on to other big issues that you're dealing with. I mean, you've got quite a bit on your plate of late. AfriForum, obviously being a big talking point. You've got the stats coming out of police saying that between October and December, there really was one case of a farm murder that was reported. But now you've got a submission by AfriForum that has brought to you evidence of a list of farm attacks. Talk to me about what that list looks like and certainly what the next step is then.
Well, we're still studying this, although we're nearing the end of their submission. But firstly, as I stated some time ago, that there can't be an accusation of underreporting when you have reported 12 cases and AfriForum say 10. It can't be underreporting. I think we need to look for another English word or any other word in any other language, because 12 is higher than 10. That's number one. Number two, we did say that it could be the language that they use in terms of defining what a farmer is, what a dweller is, and so on. For instance, we are finding where they count more deaths of farmers. It does correlate with the number, except that where they may be talking about a farm owner, it may be the son of a farm owner. There are those variations, and in one of the cases that I've looked at the preliminary report, there is actually a worker, a Mozambican, who died when the gardener attacked the wife of the farmer and the helper there, and the helper died, and therefore there are those things that we want to emphasize now. We must be careful about that. When we say a farm death, what do we mean? We don't mean, for instance, that a person would be kidnapped and then be killed elsewhere and be dumped, and then we give it a particular definition. We need to be very careful when we deal with it. But otherwise, we think that by tomorrow we'll have finalized our analysis, and by and large there's correlation, and we will call a meeting with AfriForum to say, look, it's way from what you were saying, underreporting. We may need to agree on definitions using our own qualification. or definition in terms of what is a farm, what is a farm matter, what's a farm matter, and all of that. And in that way, whenever they issue statement or stats, or we issue them, the fight shouldn't be on numbers. The fight should be, how do we bring those stats, those matters down? Whoever, whether it is a dweller, whether it is a farmer, whether it is a worker, whether it is a guard, how do we contain the situation? Because that 12, which is our stats, is still very high. When you talk death, there must be no death in the first place.
Right.
And we must collaborate. We must talk collaboration, working together and containing the situation.
Right.
More than going to the United States to say a minister or government is underreporting as if there's a motive or there's posturing. We want to warn against that because it is wrong.
Yeah. Minister, I'm also going to take advantage of having you here with us and squeeze in one more. This has been a big issue today as well, where some political parties such as ATM and the EFF has taken up issue with the sealing of the Phala Phala report. I mean, just for the benefit of our viewer, why seal that report?
No, that report in the country, there are certain rules and regulations, like declaring a report a top secret. That doesn't mean that the report can't be availed or can't be discussed, but it means that it must follow certain rules and categorization, and the agencies that take such decisions do so without the influence of the ministry. They are they look at criteria and they say this particular report must be categorized in a particular way. We understand when people demand, when the public demand reports, we go along with that. Just that we must also comply with rules and regulations in the country. In part, we are saying that, for instance, they were also talking about other reports arising from questions, and we say this type of report must be presented to the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence, and then it gets decided as to what needs to be there. Otherwise, we are transparent. Otherwise, we are open. We work for the Republic. We work for the people of South Africa, not to hide things away from anybody, but comply with the law and regulations at the same time.
Right. Minister of Police, Mr. Senzo Mkhunu, speaking to us this evening. An absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for giving us your time here on Newsfeed PM, the late edition. We're going to take a short break. We do have more news for you on the other side. Stay with us.